Greetings, fellow Beyonders. I'm your humble host and scribe, Sven, and this is Beyond the Worlds Beyond. The primary purpose of this series will be exploring the lore and story within these campaigns. In this episode, we'll be looking at the 12th episode of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, titled Prisoner's Dilemma. We'll be doing a quick summary of the episode and then diving into the lore questions that it raises and those that it answers. We return to Steele via Speaking Mirror, confronting the trio as to what is unfolded. Through the use of a magical device, a telemet, she is able to simultaneously communicate with each of them privately, and uses this interrogation, in a light sense of the term, to finally figure out most of what has been unfolding. Steele promises that, when she arrives the next morning, that she will see Naram freed and Moro punished. She also offers Ame and Ursulon the opportunity to visit the Citadel, offering the former the chance to learn more about the curse impacting her and perhaps find out who is responsible, and offering Ursulon the potential of combat training. It is announced openly that Suvi, in turn, will be subject to court-martial upon her return. Though, given the context of her telemet conversation with Steele, this comes off as more of a slap on the wrist to smooth things over with the Azure Battalion, as opposed to a severe punishment looming over her head. Thus, released from custody, the trio return to their respective rooms at the Chantry. Here, Ursulon, using Wavebreaker, sunders the sailor ring crafted from Naram's coral and, in doing so, apparently returns the coral to its true state as Naram's blood. Absorbing this blood, he recalls a childhood meeting with Naram where he encountered the spirit's grace and kindness. With this memory, and the blood flowing through him, he becomes determined to free Naram immediately as opposed to waiting for Steele. Ame, encountering Ursulon in this quest fever, attempts to follow along. Unfortunately, Ursulon, empowered by the blood, dives into the sea and starts swimming to the apparatus, while Ame, borrowing a rowboat, is quickly turned back by the Azure Battalion. Using his invisibility to bypass the underwater defenses of the apparatus, Ursulon risks the binding field to meet with Naram. Here, Naram reveals he allowed the magic of the rings and wands in order to get his blood out into the world, to find and lead to this moment of aid. The apparatus, it seems, was not powerful enough on its own to actually imprison him, but when they attempted his capture, he was impaled upon his spear, Sea Calmer. To free himself from both spear and apparatus is within his power, but the force it would unleash would devastate poor Talon, and, in his mercy, he has waited for aid to come. Now he asks Ursulon to use Wavebreaker to finally set him free, though doing so carries the risk that Ursulon may himself be trapped. Swimming beneath Naram, Ursulon embraces the risk with the honor of a knight, raises the sword, and brings it down. And thus we end for the week. Before we start asking new questions, let's take a look at the ones we've asked before and see which, if any, we now have answers for. Last episode we asked what Arima meant exactly by way-shadowed. While this episode does not answer the question, it does see Steele use the same term, independently, for the same situation. So it seems that either this term is something more widely known in this world, or that Steele is very well versed in the ways of spirits. Or, of course, both could be true. We've also talked a few times about whether Steele is a villain, an ally, or something in between. This episode still leaves that very much up in the air. She definitely positions herself as an ally and seems to honestly care and worry for Suvi despite her frustrations. That said, her pushing that they consider delaying breaking the curse until it can be studied at the Citadel, the same curse that prevents them from knowing who to trust, definitely sets alarm bells ringing. Her argument that once it is broken there may no longer be magical evidence to help point to the culprit carries some weight, but I'm not sure if it is enough to counteract my paranoia. So this one is definitely still a very big wait and see. We'd asked how much the Citadel knew about Grandmother Wren, since they had given little information on her true import and power to the Chantry. We now have Steele saying that Wren visited the Citadel often. If this statement is true, and the Citadel kept back her importance from the Chantry, What is it they do not want the rest of the Empire to be aware of? Of course, if one does subscribe to the "Steel is sus" school of thought, it is entirely possible that the claims of Wren's frequent visits were just a lie to put Ame at ease and tempt her further into coming to the Citadel. The first of the new questions is, of course, what will be the fate of Naram, Ursulon, and Port Talon? We at least know that Lu rolled high, so it is unlikely to be cataclysmic in its outcome, but the exact results remain unclear. Also unclear is exactly what the intent of Ursulon's strike was. Is it to dislodge Seacomer from the rock? Is it to sunder Seacomer itself? I've heard some theorize that it may have been a mercy strike against Naram himself. Personally, I suspect the latter is not the case. They described Ursulon going under Naram before striking, and I imagine a knight would look his ally in the face while ending his suffering. Plus, even if it was at Naram's bidding, I see no outcome where his death does not set Arima at war with Akam and with the trio. I suppose there is the detail that in D&D itself, it is not uncommon for outsiders, beings not native to a realm, to return to their own world when struck down instead of truly dying. Perhaps this would be the case here, but I still suspect the blow was not to kill. Speaking of spirits, we also had an interesting question as to the nature of spirits when it came to the discussion between Suvi and Steel. That great spirits are vast and powerful, yet at the same time so focused as to be limited in some ways, leading Steel to pose that maybe you don't get to be eternal without being singular. It's an interesting idea, and one that Ursulon may eventually have to grapple with. For now, he is living among humanity and much like humanity, but as Brennan later states, there is some part of him that is eternal. If Ursulon does not hold on to that part and does not become singular in a way mortals are not, will he himself be mortal? If he does hold on to that part, and perhaps that which is eternal is the same as breath, as discussed before, what does a singular focused Ursulon become? What aspect does that take? On the topic of spirits, there is also the interaction between Ursulon and Naram's blood. Was this due to Naram purposely sending his blood out into the world? Was it due to their past interaction when Ursulon was a cub? Or is this something that would have happened regardless if Ursulon absorbed Naram's blood, whether Naram was intending it or not? If the latter, would this be true of other spirits as well, both in terms of Ursulon absorbing their blood and part of their power, as well as other spirits growing in power through absorbing the blood of others? If true, this could potentially lead to a very, very dark future if Ursulon ever loses his way and spirals. Or it could set up a potentially terrifying villain if there is another spirit out there in Amora hunting and preying upon their kin to seize their power for itself. On happier matters, while it's not a question, I do want to draw attention to one of my favorite parts, among many, of the episode, which is the simple scene of Brennan describing Suvi using mending to repair things in Ursulon's room. He references it as using wizardry to restore order where order has been broken, which really sets out that there is a place for wizardry in this world. So often we have seen wizards, including Suvi, trying to impose order, which is where the conflicts and tensions have arisen. But one can restore things that have been broken without needing to impose upon the things that are not. So it was really lovely to have a little piece showing how that can fit in this world in a non-hostile nor exploitative manner. It also makes a nice piece of mechanics becoming story, where both Wizard and Witch, and both Ame and Suvi in particular, share mending among their spell lists. It is a place where common ground is possible. We also had a very small scene between Moro and Suvi, which raises a final question, also tied to mechanics, for this episode. What is Moro's passive perception? Suvi rolled decently, but not amazingly, on her sleight of hand when she stole his book episodes ago. Will Moro discover this theft and the culprit before Steele arrives to deal with him? Or has Suvi managed to safely abscond with a small record of her parents? Also, read the damn book already. I need that knowledge. That's all for this installment of Beyond the Worlds Beyond. As always, please feel free to throw your own questions and theories in the comments, as I love hearing what others latched onto. Also, please consider liking and subscribing if you have not already. If you want more Worlds Beyond Number content, you can also visit my Patreon, linked below, to find my appendix and timeline projects, all of which are free and publicly available. I've been your host, Sven, and thank you very much for listening. Farewell, for now, fellow Beyonders.